Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with a crime. This is a show where I try to educate real stories. Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. We have local famous attorney Warren Fitzgerald in the studio with three of his brothers who are going to tell us about pain management clinics and how the Texas legislature decided to keep people out of pain management clinics business. And we want to talk about how you can go from running a legitimate business to it becoming a crime, and what we can learn about these lessons. And we'll develop it as it goes along. Of course, you're always invited to call in and ask questions about the topic, to learn, to be educated, and we'll all be educated about it because this is a new law. At one point in Texas, anybody could operate a pain management clinic by having a doctor working there, certain protocol and procedures, and patients. A regular person like me or you could own it. And then at one point, the Texas legislature decided to make it a law that a doctor, a physician, had to actually own a pain management clinic. And so there are already pain management clinics out there. We have Warren Fitzgerald, who's going to explain to you what that law is all about and how his clients got caught up in it. And we'll just take it straight to you, Warren. Thank you for being my guest.
You're welcome, Vivian. Thank you for having us. Excuse me. I'm pleased that we're able to be here today to present these fine men to the public. This will really be their first opportunity to tell their side of what happened. I believe their reputations and their characters were all sullied and attacked by these charges, and hopefully this can kind of clear the air surrounding them because I feel that they really did nothing wrong. In 2000, as you stated, prior to 2009, an individual business person could open up a pain management clinic. Now, of course, he couldn't practice medicine, but as I believe generally was the case, a physician would be brought in who would actually see patients, prescribe medication, but the ownership of the business could be owned by an entrepreneur, business person, and there was nothing wrong with it. In 2009, the Texas Medical Board revised their rules to make it illegal for an individual to own a pain management clinic, and they required that the clinic be owned 100% by a physician. So that was passed in around 2009 and went into hard compliance in 2010. And then, of course, at that point, activity which was previously lawful became unlawful. And there was a statute in the medical board provisions that gave criminal penalties to this conduct as well. So to make a long story short, these gentlemen had gone into business lawfully, conducting a legal, lawful enterprise, and the legislature passed a law that made lawful citizens now subject to criminal prosecution. And that is what happened. And I think it was around 2011, they were arrested, they were put on television, they were handcuffed, very embarrassing. These are men who are very much involved in the community, known in the community, and as I said, their reputations were attacked. I'll fast forward to the final conclusion of it. All charges were dismissed against Danny Muhammad, Isaiah Muhammad. There were two medical assistants that were arrested. Charges were dismissed against them. One was a pharmacy owner. Well, two pharmacy owners, charges were dismissed against them. Dr. Akili Graham Muhammad, all 4 charges were filed against him. 3 were dismissed. The only one that we couldn't get around was the fact that the physician is required under the statute to spend 33 1/3% of his time physically on site, and Dr. Akili had 4 clinics, so it just was not physically possible to be there 1/3 of his time. I might note that the medical board did grant 4 licenses, but the prosecutions failed to take that in consideration. And as a result, Dr. Graham did take a deferred adjudication, which will not result in a criminal conviction. He's not a felon, not a misdemeanor, no kind of conviction, as you're well aware. So it was still somewhat bittersweet, but with the mathematics of it, we felt like there just was no way to avoid that particular charge. And that kind of brings us to where we are.
Okay. All right. I want to ask a few questions. Do you think it would be best to ask now or let each guy tell his story?
You're running this ship.
I am running it, so let me ask you a question. I just wanted to have permission to run it because I know that, you're a manly man. So anyway, so what I'm concerned about is when laws are changed, I know ignorance of the law is no defense. So what I'm curious about is when you have a lawful clinic, how do you know when the rules change? I mean, to me, I'm one of those fight to the end criminal defense lawyers, so I'm not questioning your ability because, I bow down to you, Warren Fitzgerald Muhammad. I think you're the greatest. But I'm just wondering is why couldn't a mistake of fact or mistake of law be a lawful defense since, unless the medical board is going to send you notice of all the pain management clinics to let them know the rules have changed, how would you know the rules changed?
Right. That was one of our arguments, and it was a position we took until the end. But the way the prosecution approached it, that was a soft compliance period. Mm-hmm. So they didn't pass a law and then just immediately go into effect. And it was a soft compliance, and then it gradually rolled into a hard compliance.
I see.
So that was a question, and at some point you make a decision whether you go
want to risk it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and Dr. Akili had a lot to risk. All right, Durst Muhammad, thank you for being my guest, and tell me what we can learn from the experience that you had, sir.
Well, again, thank you, Vivian, as Brother Warren said. This is our first, public opportunity to kind of share with our experience that others can learn from, but more importantly, kind of give our side of the story.
Sure.
There's always 2 sides. One of the things, again, as Brother Warren talked about, when the pain management, and it was just that, an opportunity, it was a business opportunity. And in exploring the opportunity, the blanket or the jacket that had been put on pain management clinics wasn't the greatest. So even prior going into this opportunity, because that's what I'm going to call it, a business opportunity, Brother Danny, myself, and others, we wanted to make sure that we not only were above board, but because, as Brother Warren has stated, our reputation in the community and what we brought to the table, we didn't want that to be minimized or discarded because of this particular business that we were getting into. So we did all our due diligence, and we wanted to make sure not only that we were above board, but above board. And it even came out, and Dr. Graham will probably share this even more, that the procedures, the protocols, and the steps that we put together to come into our clinic, when it was brought to the attention of the Texas board, they stated that this is not only the proper way, but this should be a model, and others should kind of use our way of doing things as a template to do business. So,
what year did you start this business?
06.
06. So it's way before the rules changed.
Right before the rules changed. So in going into the business, we did all the necessary steps and put things in place, and things were going fine. And so, again, going to, as Brother Warren stated, when they made the rule, and Brother Danny, when I gave way to him, could you raise the question, when these things come up, and he was constantly checking, because again, we wanted to stay above. He would constantly check and kind of keep us abreast what the new things were, whether they were rules, whether they were policies, and he would kind of always constantly, as well as Dr. Graham. And so we believed and still believe that not only were we doing things correctly, there was no ill intent, no malicious, no let's sit down and try to get over type thing. Everything that we did was a calculated, thought out procedure to not only do things right, but do things again above board.
I believe you. Where was your location? What was the name of your business?
Preferred Medical Clinic was on in I-10 off of Federal Road, and there was some other location. That was the one I had, and Brother Danny can share where's his words. And we got caught up in again, when you have a jacket or when you're in an industry such as that, you know, some of the good apples can get thrown out with the bad apples, and I think that was the case with us. I'll close with, again, going into the business, we knew that there would be some risk as any business.
Sure.
But we never thought that the risk would be really an unfair backdoor way to take the business away from us, especially in light of the fact that when things were brought to our attention, we immediately addressed them and made phone calls and made sure that everything was proper, and you know, but then to come and then to be criminally indicted and charged, you know, that's just part of being black in America, to be quite honest. And so, you know, maybe we'll get to that discussion further, but there was some underlying things that was more than just us not being in compliance. There was some underlying things that came out later because of who we were and what we represent.
Right. And I want to take the last 15 minutes of the show to talk about the moral to the story and being black in America. Because we need to
black
talk about
men in particular.
Black men in particular. Trust me, y'all's little underlings, the women, have our share too. We can smile and get out of a few things, but we still get stomped on. Trust me, you know it.
Exactly.
You see, we get stomped on too. But we have to say that y'all are our protection. So you are the first people that they go after.
And I might add, you asked about as far as defending on the lack of knowledge. That was one of the things that kind of prevented us from asserting that defense, was the fact that they actually gained awareness and attempted to rectify the situation.
Right. It sounds like the only thing that got caught up was this 33% thing that the doctor got. Because, I mean, what bothers me about the whole thing is, first of all, I know you guys, and I know that y'all hard work. Only person I didn't know was Dr. Akili, but I knew Danny was a hard-working man. I knew Durst was a hard-working man in the community. I've known him from when he was at Alfonso Crutch. I know he worked his butt off to try to help rehabilitate kids. I've known him for years. And I knew Danny for years. I forgot how I knew you, Danny, but I knew you too. It's just working hard in the community. So I'm sure that Dr. Graham Muhammad did the same thing, and you, Warren. So it troubled me when you called, you know, or emailed me to let me know it was happening. I was praying for you because I know that you're an honorable man of integrity. So it bothered me, and it does bother me as a black person, because right now it's taboo to say you're being picked on because you're black. You know, nobody wants to hear that right now. That's why the majority doesn't want to hear that. It's out of style to be sympathetic or empathetic, putting themselves in our position. But we know that a hospital is not owned by doctors.
Yes. Yes.
An emergency clinic is not owned by doctors. They're owned by business people.
Right.
They're owned by stockholders. And we know that anybody could own a pain management clinic. And so it's the same thing. But they won't be changing the law for a hospital. They won't be changing the law to catch them up in it. And that's just a big example that I can say that anybody can relate to. Hospitals not owned by doctors. Right. Okay, they're a business to make money, for profit, that hires doctors and advertises to get patients, like Texas Children, like these cancer centers that are advertising on the radio and TV, because everybody in Houston's gonna go where? Texas.
Yes.
Texas. What's the cancer place?
Texas Cancer Treatment.
Yeah, cancer treatment centers. All of Americas are now trying to compete with MD Anderson because they know everybody in Texas is going to go to MD Anderson. So Texas, I mean, they're all in competition. They're not owned by doctors. I would just imagine. Right. I would just bet that they're not owned by doctors. And so that's what's frustrating to me. So we want to be entrepreneurs too, and we're going to get into businesses that are the least expensive. You sure can't start off by owning a hospital, but you might graduate to doing that. Mm-hmm. But when you get stopped by a backdoor law, as you said, there's, what can you do? So that's what troubles me. is because you've got backdoored into it. And I know that the police officers are targeting minority businesses in the medical profession. I've had an FBI agent tell me about 4 or 5 years ago, being nice to me, he didn't mean any harm. I was representing someone on it was a federal FBI agent on a federal Medicare fraud case, and he told me, we are running a computer program out of DOJ, Department of Justice in DC, with every Nigerian surname that has a license, has a Medicare license for home health care. And any other business, they're running a computer program so they can just print just them out so they can target them. And they had done that for 3 states, Texas, Mississippi, and maybe it was Louisiana, but he was specifically assigned to that. And he said, if I were you, I'd pass my cards out in a Nigerian community. And I'm gonna tell you what I did when they went after. First, it was home health care, as y'all remember. Then it was pharmacists. They started going after the pharmacists. Then when they run everybody out of business that's a minority, then they. I actually I helped a lawyer I was working with, Stan Schneider. We helped him get a big case dismissed on a Nigerian pharmacist, and I actually went to him and said, look, let's start an organization of Nigerian pharmacists so y'all can just keep me on retainer, and I'm gonna tell you what the rules are every year. We're gonna have some seminars, because I mean, I could make more money passing the cards out, but I would just rather you do it right and not get in trouble. Because, obviously I'm always be a poor lawyer because I'm trying to help you not get in trouble. I get more money if you got in trouble. But
and it's the way it was done too. I mean, any one of these gentlemen would have surrendered themselves,
to get in compliance.
To notice, but to go out to their homes as if they were drug kingpins, and the doctor can tell this story, to have him, for the district attorney to go out with the police and all of that to make a public spectacle of it, to arrest a man, who
that's taking care of his family. And the thing that's so sad is that, and this is why I ran for judge and lost. This is why I've started this TV show and I fund it, because I want my legacy to tell our story. So maybe if young people are watching it, or a lot of ex-cons watch it on monitors, you'll understand the importance about participating in the community, in voting, knowing who your judges are, knowing who your city politicians are, because a lot of times people get upset about police brutality. And what I've tried to teach in this on this show is that, but when the mayors come to your little community civic centers, y'all don't remember the mayor hires the police chief. Right. Okay, remember to start asking real questions. Ask about who are you gonna hire for police chief, and is he gonna treat our black boys fairly? Right. Are you gonna stop the white boys and the black boys who are 17 driving? Are you gonna just illegally search the black boys' cars and say they have marijuana, because the white boys have marijuana too? Right. Are you going to treat us all the same? Put some pressure on your city government, on your district leaders, because if we don't start doing it and be more politically aware, we'll never get there. And so, like I said, as part of my legacy, I want to try to leave these stories so that some, people will pay attention to who's in charge, because our legislators should not have gotten away with this. We should remember the day when you were a kid and I was a kid, where the only bad people went to jail were people who were real criminals. Yeah. You gave people a second chance. I grew up in San Antonio. If we had a joint in the car, and it was a felony in the 70s, or beer in the car, high schoolers, they throw it away. And we were black, and it was a Hispanic town. It was just 5% black, and it didn't matter. It wasn't racial. They just threw it away. Why take kids to jail for stuff like that when they're just being kids? All kids are gonna smoke a little weed. All kids are gonna drink a little beer right now, and in the 70s, and in the 60s. But you're gonna criminalize them for that? Yeah. I mean, and the same thing is happening from a baby scale to a big scale. But we could ask our leaders to stop doing that. And so I want us to be more politically aware. And I want people to know about these kind of laws, but anyway, let me stop preaching and let Danny. Danny, please, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. Well, Attorney King, I appreciate you allowing us to come on your show. You may not remember, but you're speaking about community. You one of the first people that helped us with the expungement symposiums that we did. Right. And we ran them for several years.
Right. We started them at Fountain of Praise.
Fountain of Praise.
Fountain of Praise.
Reverend Beamer's Praise. That's right.
And in fact, a lot of those lawyers that I wrangled together to do that have gone on to their churches and done them. They don't even invite me to come speak, and they took all my material.
Right. That's right.
That's okay. It was, I did it for the right reason.
Yes, that's right. Well, you were doing some bigger things, so we didn't have to come back to you again because you were doing some real
That's okay. I mean, it's all good.
Well, I've been, I was on the police department, the Houston Police Department for 16 years. When we decided that we wanted to get into business, it was an opportunity. And as the other men spoke of, that it was legitimate, it was fair. As I said, I had a career of 16 years on the police department. And if anybody out there right now, they can call right now if I did any wrong to them. And that's just to say that we had no intentions on violating the law, because I was an enforcer of the law. We had no intentions on violating the law. We knew that the business carried a stigma, and certain people would look at it a certain way. But we were in business, and that's exactly what it was. And some of the things that we experienced by me being in that field, I was able to recognize some of the things that, some of the games, the quote games that were being played with us in this business endeavor that we had. And we, as Brother Durst was saying, that we did everything that we could to go above and beyond. I would like to advise anybody that in business or Attorney Fitzgerald warned us of this. After this was after we had went through everything we went through. Grab you an attorney. Always have you an attorney on staff, retainer, as you were just speaking of a little while ago. Always have you an attorney and seek their advice when you're getting ready to go through any type of business endeavor, whether it be a partnership or whatever it may be, and have them to look over your information and make sure that everything's okay. And instead of you bogging your brain down trying to figure out what the law is and what's being changed and whatnot, that you would use their services to keep yourself out of a predicament like we've experienced. And it has. And I understand exactly what you mean. Nobody want to hear the sympathetic story about the black this and that or whatever. But that's exactly we felt that what it was, because we know that a lot of people weren't affected, or maybe they were affected, but not to the level that we had to experience. So.
Right, and that's what's concerning me. Warren, what was the probable cause? I mean, I don't understand what the probable cause affidavit had to say. I tried to look one up to issue a warrant to have to go out to people's houses, like you said, instead of calling them to come in. I mean, what was so egregious?
Well, there was nothing egregious about it.
I know. I mean,
it started. We have to acknowledge that this is an area of abuse, and that there's a widespread problem of prescription drugs hitting the street. And being abused, some people being injured, some people dying from abuse of prescription drugs. So there is a problem there. But it was painted with such a broad brush till the innocent, I believe, was swept up along with those who were not innocent. And it really, it was almost like, I have wondered, was this all a setup, or if it was just a matter of a convergence of incidences? But an officer with the DEA came to one of the facilities supposedly looking for another place, and there was an individual who had just been hired who had previously worked at another clinic. That was a problem. And on the basis of that, they alleged that they began an investigation. And that's kind of what started. And the brothers can kind of elaborate. They
Let me ask you this. Was the person the problem, or the other clinic the person worked at the problem? Do you remember?
Well, it was a combination of them looking for a clinic that was a problem and this person that had been previously arrested. But they didn't come to our clinic because there were any complaints or anything that they were looking for at our clinic.
So they're looking for him, and he worked at that.
It was a lady.
That she worked at that former clinic that had shut down.
Yes.
And she had been arrested.
And she had been arrested in relation to that clinic that shut down.
So they were familiar with her. So I guess the flags went up, and they started an investigation.
And let me tell you what's interesting about this. As I've told you, I'm on retainer with some Nigerian pharmacists, and that has come up. That same thing has come up with the pharmacy. One of my pharmacies is being investigated. Started last year. Hopefully it'll die down. What they're prepared for, similar to what you said, is when I can't keep up with all the new laws. It's kind of not what my role is. I'm just telling them what their rights are generally. I'm not reading the law and keeping up with it.
Right.
But I'm telling them what it is generally. I have like a pamphlet of what their rules are. They're assigned, because they actually formed, in my suggestion, they just formed their own like Nigerian pharmacy club, basically. So they're supposed to share new information. And some of them work at major firms, like Walgreens or CVS, and then, a lot of them have gone, like their husband might work there, and then they left there to go out on their own. So, the bigger stores are going to keep up with the education and the literature, so they're supposed to feed it to each other. But I keep them abreast of what probable cause, what trends I see the police arresting in their industry, and they all have my card. They have a booklet for me. So if they come in, they know exactly what to do. They're immediately supposed to call me. They're immediately supposed to give my card to the officers. They're not to let them take anything out without making copies of it. They know what to do to prevent themselves. They got to call me right away. They can't let anything out of their office without them seeing it, because all the rules say that you're supposed to have a copy of but they'll just take your record sometimes.
Right.
And so they all have cameras in their office. I try to get them as hot, because let me tell you how cold these cops are. They actually, after I set this meeting up and start educating them, they hit like 7 of them in 1 week. So it was planned, but they all had me. And so they were even going in like turning their cameras off. How can you turn? Hell, cops film you when they go in, and they take films of crime scenes and people's houses, but they're going to turn their cameras off. So they were immediately to call me. I wasn't ready for that trick. Some of them had real high cameras like this, and so they couldn't really get up there to disconnect them. But why would you have to disconnect somebody's cameras if you're doing a legitimate search and investigation of their offices? And I immediately on those called their supervisor, because they left their cards, because I'd be in court. So nothing came of it, because they were ready. They were ready. They were doing all their due diligence. What they didn't do was an accident. I think one maybe had some procedural inconsistencies, because in every industry you can have there has to be some room for error.
Right.
And retraining. And it's in their manuals to retrain you for things that you're doing wrong. That's supposed to be the reason why the state agencies have compliance audits, to keep you, in compliance with the rules if you're not doing it right. So that's good advice. If you go into business, you really need to have a criminal lawyer on staff as well as civil.
Right. And concerning Dr. Graham, I didn't represent him on his case before the medical board, but I did represent Danny Muhammad, Officer Muhammad, through the procedures with the Houston Police Department. And he was not terminated specifically as a result of this prosecution, but they had it out for him.
Right.
They decided they were going to get rid of him, and we went through all of the hearings, and it became quite contentious.
Oh, I'm sure. I was a hearing examiner for the City of Houston grievance.
Right.
So I was the 3rd level before they went to arbitration. So I know that HPD at that time, this was in the 90s, they picked on minority officers a lot.
Yeah, and this is what happened. So they got him on an infraction of, I think it was not reporting
overtime or extra job or something like that.
They would submit the letter.
Being out of town, or something like that.
They get you on some kind of technicality.
It was a technicality.
Oh, I know.
But
and even the arbitration, it didn't help.
Right. No.
Right.
Oh, they had it in for you.
And with Dr. Akili, the medical board, I think they identified him, and then they had it out for him, because even before we took the plea, we talked with his counsel about the process that he was going through with the medical board, and it was agreed that this should not affect the decision of the Texas Medical Board.
Right.
Nevertheless, it did.
Do you want to speak?
Yes, ma'am. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to have a voice to kind of combat what we have been through. And I think I'll start with, I started practicing medicine in Houston in 1996. And from 96 to 2006, when we opened up the clinics, I hadn't had one complaint through the medical board, through the DEA, through the DPS, nothing from nobody on my regard as a practicing physician. There's always been a taboo about prescribing narcotics with just physicians in general. And I, of course, was one of those. Didn't like to prescribe it, didn't want to be involved with people who were using it because of all the associated problems with, dependency and overdose, suicides, all those type of things. This is just really a taboo thing. So I got into doing pain management actually as a kind of a alternate to my private practice. And once I was in the business, it became just an added part of my passion in medicine. These people were being, grossly misdiagnosed, grossly undertreated. I saw cases of people that, if my family members had been treated like that after surgeries, I would have been incensed. I'm literally examining people, and I just was in awe of how atrocious their end product was after they had paid these people or used their insurance, whatever they had done. And that was the onus of how I got into practicing pain management. It was because of the need of the people, and they needed somebody to be an advocate for them. And that's how it started. And for the first 2 years we were in business, it was the same thing. We had no complaints, no problems, no overdoses, no suicides, no arrests, because we were getting rid of people that we knew and kind of, sniffed out who were the bad apples. And we were legitimately treating people who had problems and severe pain conditions. 2008, the board had a complaint against me at one of the pain management clinics. We went, we presented everything to them, and they concluded that we were doing everything correct. And as Brother Durst mentioned, that we should be a standard for how pain management was done in Texas. That's what their representative said to me in a hearing. The only thing that came out of that hearing is he said that our charts needed to have more documentation. Within a week, we had our charts completely revamped, which included that. So that's the way we were. I never wanted to lose my license to practice medicine. I worked too hard to get it. And I definitely didn't want to lose it for the sake of chasing money. I had the ability to make as much money as I wanted to. So it wasn't that. It was every opportunity we had to learn about a new law, to implement something in our businesses, to make sure that we were treating people correctly, and making sure that we, as Brother Durr said, not only following the law, but making sure we were taking it steps above to make sure nobody had any question about what we're doing. So that was kind of the format that we went into all of the businesses. And as they grew and as they continued to be successful, like any businessman, you want to continue to expand. And so when we got to 4 clinics, I was already using telemedicine. I could be in the clinic with my physicians that were helping me, watching what they were doing, listening to them do the exams, checking the charts. They could ask me questions at any time. That is considered being there in the clinic. So even though there was a 33.3% rule, when they came after us, they didn't even take telemedicine in consideration. And it is legitimate to do it. Now, there were some mistakes that I made, but at the end of the day, to come and have it turned into a criminal case, that to me is what was absurd.
Right, because your mistakes were procedural. They weren't criminal.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see. We've had someone holding for a long time, so if we could pause right now and take a call. Caller, if you're still on the phone, please announce yourself and ask your question.
Yes. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, I'd like to say good evening, Vivian. Another great show.
Good evening.
And peace to the brothers.
Peace.
Peace.
Now, but here in Houston, that pharmacy business is big business. And there is a lot of corruption involved in it, and it's a lot of since the laws in Texas is kind of lenient on prescriptions, people from all over the neighboring states come here and get to do the pills. And it's big in this area, and I'm not from this area. And I'm like, wow, you see the lines. I'm like, what is going on? What is? And he's like, oh, them script doctors up in there, this and that. So, not saying that the brothers, of course, the brother looks like he's a legitimate doctor in pain management, but maybe why they was focused on so much, because it is out of control in this particular, it is like a main, I don't want to say choice of drugs, but it's very big in this area. And one question to you, Vivian. The doctors, when the police went up and messed with the videotapes, was there any kind of repercussions for that? Are you guys trying to take it to, trying to get some resolve on that?
Nope, but they didn't get charged. They didn't get charged, so we were just happy. And on those people, they just raised them or hid them. You can do hidden cameras, so I told them to get more of the hidden cameras and just raise them up. Just raise them up.
But isn't that against the law?
It is, but I mean, who's going to enforce the law against the police?
Absolutely. And one more thing, I was just like yesterday or today, the Supreme Court passed that the law with cell phones, that the police now can't get your cell phone and go through your cell phones. Supreme Court passed it either yesterday or today. So, all right, thank you.
Okay, yeah, and one of the things you have to do with cell phones is keep in mind that you always want to, especially if you're worried about somebody getting in your phone, you need to have a lock on it. And then they can't get in it without a warrant because you don't unlock it for them. But you also tell, if you get arrested and you don't want your cell phone there, try to leave it with someone else. But keep a lock on your phone. That's all I can tell you. I haven't heard that law yet. I'll look at it. I know the Supreme Court was looking at it. I knew 2 weeks ago, I knew that it was before the Supreme Court. I know they have to get a warrant to check your cell towers to see where you are, but I'll check on that and we'll try to have a show on that. Thank you for calling.
Vivian, one of the things we talked about was the fact, again, going into the business, doing our due diligence. And again, I go back to Brother Danny, who has some experience with that. We would welcome any type of authority to come in. I mean, that was something that we looked forward to, because if there was something we were doing wrong and they pointed out, we would immediately want to address that. And I'm quite sure we were visited by what they have plants or undercover people, but nothing ever came back because, again, of our procedures and protocols that we had in place. We had peace officers at all our locations. They were given instructions because, again, as Brother Warren said, there has been some shadiness and some other things. And the games that we were aware of, we would make sure that, you wouldn't have these big long lines and people just dumping and all these fake things. So, our insistence on doing things right, and again being above board, again just makes this whole thing doesn't pass the smell test in regards to, if there were some things being not properly done procedurally, then why not give an opportunity? And let me just finish with this. To the person, that whenever I talk to somebody about a particular situation, and it's been done right, to the person, I always say, well, why didn't y'all get grandfathered in? Everybody says that. Why didn't you, if the new law came in, well, why didn't y'all get grandfathered? In every other scenario, when the law comes, if you were doing things, they would grandfather you in.
I agree.
Why not in this case? I mean, to the person. So
now let me ask you this. When you had the pain management clinic before it was legislated that doctors had to have it, was there any legislation that audited you guys? Were you regulated at all? The company. Well, for example, if you had home health care, the Texas Department of Human Services or whatever that administers the Medicare program would come in and do annual audits of it. Were y'all audited or regulated at all?
There was no regulation of pain management.
And see, that's the problem. They should have started with regulations and guidelines and had some type of public notice, on TV or in the newspapers to say, whoever has a pain management clinic, you need to register your pain management clinic and get it audited. And see, this is what I get angry with legislators. Don't just pass a new law and not have a way to grant. See, there's no procedure to grandfather you in.
Right.
I mean, it had to have been written in the law in 2009.
Exactly, and that was what happened prior to 2009.
Hold on just a minute. Is there a call holding? Let's take this one call and hold that thought, Warren. Thank you for calling Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Turn your volume down on the TV and talk directly into your telephone. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hi, Vivian. This is Joseph. And gentlemen, good afternoon to y'all, too.
Good afternoon.
Yes,
Good evening.
I'm getting feedback on this telephone, so
That's okay, but we can hear you. Go ahead.
Very good. The question I have is about CVS gave a man eye drops or ear drops for his eyes to correct his illness there. And you described procedural and criminal. Could you expand on the difference between my example and the example you have here and describe or explain what procedural and criminal mean?
Okay, I'll try to do that.
Thank you.
A procedure can be multiple things. Let's say CVS has their own internal procedure. So there's somebody supervising the pharmacist, and they have internal procedures, the way we dispense our prescriptions. But then there are also pharmacists individually are regulated by the pharmacy board. So they have to follow, every pharmacist and pharmacies have their own license too. They have to follow, somebody has to comply with the pharmacy regulations, right? To make sure the prescriptions are fair, things of this nature. Criminal is if you intentionally do something illegal, like dispensing prescriptions to someone who doesn't have a valid prescription. I mean, that's illegal because you can't do that. You can't, I don't think pharmacists are required to verify every prescription, like call every doctor, but they do go in and put them in the computer to verify the insurance coverage that person has, and so they verify it that way. And if they see a trend, because everybody's using computers for medicine now and dispensing, if they see too many prescriptions coming too quickly, like if it's a every 90-day prescription, and they see the person trying to refill it every 30 days, then that's an alert, and they're supposed to call and do some more backup. But the Texas Board of Pharmacies regulates those procedures. So every pharmacist is taking continuing education every year to know what the laws are, and the pharmacy itself has a separate license, and they have to be in compliance. So what we're saying when it comes to pain management, the difference between pharmacy and pain management is it wasn't regulated at all. So what I'm telling you is that they weren't regulated. So anybody, you, Joseph, could have said in 2006, I'm going to open up a pain management clinic, like a little hospital, and I'm going to lease this space. I'm going to hire doctors. I'm going to hire receptionists. I'm going to hire marketers to tell them that we're here. And we're going to just set this up. And there were no regulations. You did not have to call Austin to say, give me a license to open a pain management clinic. But if you were opening a pharmacy, regular people like you, Joseph, can open a pharmacy. You don't have to be a pharmacist to open a pharmacy. So you could just call the Texas Board of Pharmacies and say, what do I need to do to own a pharmacy? And you can just follow those rules, apply for a pharmacy license, and they're either going to give it to you or not give it to you, and then you can then go and hire a pharmacist to actually work for you in your pharmacy. So CVS is not a pharmacist. You see what I'm saying? And so when you see mom and pop pharmacies in neighborhoods, they can be owned by entrepreneurs, but they have to have, but they've been licensed by the state for having a pharmacy, and then they have to hire licensed pharmacists that are following their rules. And so there are rules that are procedural where you just made a mistake. You might have dispensed 25 pills instead of 30. You made a mistake. You didn't count right. There are some things that go with that profession that you're just not doing. Your computer's down that day and you do something by hand and you forget something. And when they come in and audit you, you did something wrong, but that's a procedural mistake. It's not rising to the level of criminal, because to be criminal, you have to intentionally violate the law. You have to intentionally dispense to me because I'm a dope fiend and I want some dope medicine or whatever, some syrup or whatever they do.
Let me interrupt you, Vivian. And you're saying that these gentlemen are very disciplined and they did not do anything criminal. It's more procedural. Is that correct?
They did not know Yes, because when they opened the clinic, there were no procedures. You could just open a clinic. It was unregulated. And what they're frustrated about is that they opened it in 2006, and in 2009, the Texas legislature decided, oh, now we're going to regulate pain management clinics, and we're going to write in the law that they have to be owned 100% by doctors. So you might have had 1,000 pain management clinics, little hospitals that were owned by individuals, and now they can no longer be owned by individuals. You see what I'm saying?
Excellent.
And so they didn't
Excellent
get grandfathered in. They are just all of a sudden, who's keeping up with the laws that are being passed in Austin? And because it wasn't registered, they weren't a business that was already on some kind of registry in Austin. It's up to you to know that all of a sudden these people have passed this law. So they got charged with owning a clinic because Durs Muhammad was an educator and Danny Muhammad was an HPD officer for 16 years. So they get charged with criminal, and the cops go out and arrest them at their houses. It's all on TV. And they had been owning a business that was legal, and then 3 years later it was illegal, and they didn't realize it.
May I respond to him as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's a simple explanation.
Right.
It's a little more complicated than that.
There was no regulation, and then in 2009, we were mandated that we had to get any pain management clinic, not licensed, but you had to get a license for it to be a pain management clinic. So we did that. And again, I'll say that in 2010, when they came into one of our clinics, that now was 14 years now. No malpractice suits. I had never had any Medicare, no Medicaid fraud. I had never had any complaints to the Texas Medical Board that were legitimate other than that 2008, which they found out was an addict that tried to report me. And so we're talking 14 years with no blemishes on my record. And now all of a sudden I'm going to become a criminal.
Yeah.
Because the Texas Medical Board said that I was lying, that I knew that I wasn't the owners, and they just tried to make it as if everything that I did was from the inception.
His whole career was illegitimate,
Right.
and took his license. Basically, they've taken his license, and that's what's so unfair. What I've noticed about boards, say like the Texas State Bar that regulates lawyers, the board that represents doctors. I was married to a dentist that represents dentists. It seems like the boards have to go after people in their profession, and it's easier to go after minorities.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just easier. We're just an easier target, just like the police. We're an easier target in profession because we're not going to have friends down there. We're not second and third generation doctors and lawyers. As you know, most physicians in Houston, their daddies are physicians, their mamas are physicians. So it's a family tradition to be a physician. So generally, they've probably gone to school with someone that's now on the State Board of Medical Examiners.
Absolutely.
And so they know people because they're second and third generation. We're first generation professionals. We don't have any friends in Austin. So I'm not saying it's racist, but I think it's easier to punish someone that you don't know and you have no connection to, and you can just assume everything bad about them.
And as soon as they get started, they won't turn
And once
back.
they're like a bulldog. Once they
Exactly.
put their teeth in you, even though they find out you're a good person, they never back
They
down.
never apologize.
They never apologize. They never back down. And so
They won't admit that they're wrong and that you are an upstanding person. 'Cause
Right.
Everything they went and found in my history was as I said it. But you're still going to say that I'm a liar and that I was a criminal because I thought of criminal intent when we opened up these businesses?
And they never
It
thought
make
of
logical
criminal
sense.
intent.
Right.
And so you can't just, like Warren said, just paint a broad brush and sweep everybody. It's like fishing for one type of fish, and you throw a big old net in there, and you get all kind of fish, and then you don't want to throw any of them back. You got to throw the ones back that you're not targeting, because everybody's not doing something wrong. And that's why we need to tell our stories to make people understand. If you're ever on a jury, Joseph, or a person like you's on a jury, open your mind. I mean, think about the fact that everybody's not guilty of the crimes that they're accused of. People have a lot of preconceived notions.
Wanted to add concerning the legislation, prior to this present legislation, the only reference to pain management, to the best of my knowledge, was under anesthesia. And that was just some reference. And what they did, they eliminated those references and created a new category under the Texas Medical Board rules, and created a pain management subdivision under their board rules. But they could have easily made those rules administrative.
Right.
But the legislators, your legislators, the people you vote for and put in office, decided they would attach criminal penalties to it. And that's what made it a criminal offense. And as you said from the beginning, we have to, we get all excited about voting for president, but a lot of times we overlook who our legislators are, who the judges are, things of this nature. And this is really where the rubber meets the road, because they could very easily have said that's going to be an administrative sanction or something like that. But they attached criminal penalties to it as well, and then didn't even create a process for existing business owners to be grandfathered in.
Like in any other business that you have, grandfather you in. Also, they didn't create a procedure for margin of error. I mean, if there are some errors that are taking place, give you 30 days or 60 days to correct that. I mean, in every other procedure, if you're trying to help have businesses, have taxpayers, have upstanding citizens, you can make mistakes that are not criminal and say, okay, y'all fix this in 30 days. Y'all fix this. You're, doctor, you're running 4 clinics. Although I accept and understand you trying to do it by telemarketing or telemedicine. We don't think that's good enough.
Right.
So we're going to give you an opportunity to correct that. They're not going to tell you how. You might want to hire another doctor, close a clinic, disassociate yourself. We're going to give you 30 days, 60 days to correct this, because we respect the fact that you worked, 30 years to get this license. Right. And that's what frustrates me. And that's one of the reasons why I ran for judge. I think people should donate their time to being on the Texas Medical Board, because I've talked to people who are on these different boards, minorities, and they realize how their other board members will just always single out the minorities, and they don't even know if it's intentional. But you got to have an advocate to tell your story. Exactly. You got to have someone to see it your way. That's right. Because I don't think the majority means to do that, but they'll just always. We just got finished with a capital murder case, and I was intimidated by 3 people got killed that were, maybe gang related, and I was getting intimidating looks by someone in the audience that had to do with the deceased. I understand, and so I brought that to the court's attention. One of the jurors they started getting security for the jurors because the same thing was happening to the jurors, and they told us about that. The prosecutor immediately, when they described a black male, assumed it was the defendant's father. It was not. It was one of the deceased's father. And she said he should be disbarred for that because, the defendant's father was a lawyer. He should be disbarred for that. That's her immediate response. He should be disbarred. When we got the juror on the witness stand outside the presence of the jury to describe who was doing it, it wasn't the defendant's father. He was sitting on the front row like a lawyer. I had previously described someone on the front row as being intimidating to me, but I meant front row in the vestibule behind the lawyer's deal. When the jurors described it and they said who it wasn't my client's father. It was the same guy who was doing it to me. She never took it back. She's already wanting to disbar this man.
Yeah.
Okay? Just think of that. Just think if she had the power to be on the state board, how far that would go.
Operating with that mindset.
Operating with that mindset already. I mean,
with no evidence. I mean, just your emotion.
See,
it's just emotion, and going to destroy this man's life and career behind a mistaken identity. Luckily, I was dogmatic enough to get it cleared up on who it was.
Yes. Well, you see, Attorney King, one of the things that, as we spoke about how the media got involved, you got to remember who was the district attorney at that time. They had a big campaign going on with, we're going to shut down all pain management clinics and whatnot. And I know it needed to be regulated, but we did self-governance of our own. Dr. Graham took the time out to try to contact. He could speak more to. He contacted the DEA. He contacted them and asked them, come in and check me out so I can be in compliance. He can tell you more about it because he did it.
Well, we have 4 minutes, so tell us, doctor, because this hour goes fast without commercials.
Can I get just 30 seconds? Because I know this is being taped, and I want to go on record that the same fervor and the same way they jumped up and down with their pom-poms about, how guilty we were, we want to see that same type of fervor and pom-poms that everything was dismissed and admonished.
That's not going to happen.
I know it's not, but because this is recorded, I want that to be on record. And the last thing is, they have, Brother Dan and I, you pull up on the internet, they got us associated with a pain management clinic in Beaumont that somebody had an overdose on.
2 murders.
It had nothing to do with it at all.
2 deaths.
Well, how did y'all get associated with it?
You tell me.
Just loose
in the paper.
Yeah, just throw us into the pile, and then when you pull up on the internet now, My name, Brother Danny, also is associated with 2 overdoses. We had nothing to do with that. So I wanted to, just the camera I'm looking at, I wanted to let everyone know that that's not us. We had nothing to do with that. And we thank God that we have an opportunity to share that on Vivian King show.
No problem. What are you going to say, Doctor?
Yes, when we were in the active phase of practicing in our pain management clinics, I contacted the DEA, the DPS, the Texas Medical Board, all 3 of them, and asked them if they had a representative that could come out, look at our place of business, look at our operation, and let us know if we were doing anything that they would consider was not within their guidelines. And each one of them told me that they didn't do anything like that, that I needed to seek counsel in order to set it up. I said, we have already done that, but nobody was willing to come out and do that from a preventive perspective. But as soon as things went to the opposite side, they came at us with everything. And the last thing that I'll say is that my lawyer that dealt with me with the Texas Medical Board, there was a senior lawyer there in the Texas Medical Board. She said in the tenure that she's been at the Texas Medical Board, she's never seen anybody treated like I was treated. Not one person in the whole time she was there. Because she was able to make deals with doctors that was a disciplinarian thing, but keep their license, whatever case may be. We had a deal on the table. It was coming to me to sign, and she said that somebody in a higher position told her that you can't do that with him. She had never seen that before in all of her years working there.
No professional.
In the last minute or two we have,
Sure.
I'd like for the brothers to talk about some of the things they were doing in the community.
Sure.
And if you would.
Sure.
Because sometimes we need to be able to, as Brother Rob said, connect the dots on why people are singled out. Sure. I can't prove anything, I don't know, but if you can just...
We have 2 minutes, do it.
Sure. Go on.
But
Danny, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first, before I even started, I spoke about the things that we were doing, trying to help the
community.
A lot, oftentimes, it's anybody. It wasn't just for black, it was for anybody. We didn't discriminate.
That deal that we did on expungement, it was everybody in the community that came, black, white, Hispanic, everybody was there.
Because we had the same type of representation in the attorneys that you invited.
I brought all color lawyers.
Religion, Jew, black, white,
blacks,
Mexican, whatever.
Everybody.
But we did that because this is what we are more than just business partners, and these are some of the things that that allowed us the freedom to be able to do such things as the expungement and the seminars and the prison ministry,
resurrection zone, housing criminals that were released from prison.
Right, because that was one of our concerns.
Exactly.
What about the farm?
We had a farm.
Right.
Took
Let me just say this. We have 1 minute. I just want to say this. Y'all are still pillars of the community. I still admire you greatly. Don't give up. I mean, there's still a lot of work to do. We have got to infiltrate the mainstream. We have got to be on city council. We have to have representatives in the state legislature. We have got to have people down at the judicial system on these boards. We have to fight to support each other, our children. We want our children to be something, right? I mean, we've got to be the sacrificial lamb. I'm never running for judge again, I don't think, but I'm going to help the young people coming behind me. I'm renovating an old house on Alabama right now that I'm going to have a law office. I'm going to give fundraisers for the young people in their 30s. I ain't giving up. You know what I mean? We've got to keep trying to help the next generation. We've got to, because, nobody helped us, and we are being the sacrificial lambs. So we got to keep pushing. And you go into another business. If it's halfway houses, transitional homes. I mean, there are things to be done.
They'll never stop us.
Yeah.
I can say that with absolute confidence, because they may have knocked us down, they may have given us a good punch, and we may lean over, but we coming back stronger than ever.
Oh, yeah.
They'll never stop this, not this brotherhood.
Yeah. Right.
We didn't do anything wrong, and every time we return and open up new businesses, it will be for the right reason. Mm-hmm. And if we make money, that's what we're supposed to do.
That's what you're supposed to do.
That's right.
How's the community going to prosper if you don't make money? That's right. You pay taxes. Make your community look better. Have nice buildings. How are we going to do it otherwise?
Fund your campaign.
Huh?
Fund your and Judge campaign.
Oh, no. I help Warren. I want to sit back and sit back and continue to tell our story. Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Maybe the brothers will come back and tell you some more about their story and other good things that are happening in the community. Please keep watching. Please keep listening. Please keep learning about your criminal justice system in Harris County. Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Thank you for tuning in again tonight. We have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with crime. This is a show where I